Hey everybody, and welcome back to My Friend the Reader. So it's been a while and I apologize for that, but I think I'd mentioned in a previous video that my wife and I were expecting our first child, which came, and as you can imagine, our little girl has been a handful. I think a lot of first-time parents probably share similar kinds of experiences, that it becomes your soul, or at least obviously the priority in terms of your focus, which has meant that I haven't not had time to make any videos for my booktube cast, and I do want to continue. It's something that is important to me, and I find I will continue to do. I have managed to continue reading though, and so I just wanted to do a bit of a catch up in terms of what I've been reading this summer, particularly the Man Booker Prize long list that came out in July. And I'm just trying to pull up the website so that we can get a sense of what the long list is and the timelines. So anyways, this summer I've read a bunch of things that had been on my TBR for a while. I read some of the buzzier books of the summer, including There and by Tommy Orange, which was great, and Florida by Lauren Groff, which was okay. I have also just started The Idiot by L.F. Boutman, which was one of the finalists for the Pulitzer this year. It's a polarizing book. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. It's a campus novel following the life of a first-year language student at Harvard in the late 1990s. It takes place around the same time I started university, so I think I identify with that. I like the kinds of things she's doing with the discussions around language and learning languages. I find that fascinating. Let's see how the book is. I'm about 15% in, so I should get that in the next couple of weeks. More significant in terms of what I'm doing reading wise is the Man Booker long list. I did this last year for the first time, where I tried to read the entire long list, and last year I had managed, and a couple of friends joined me, but I had managed to read 11 of the 13 books by the time the award was announced. That said, 6 of them I think I had already read by the time the long list had been announced, so it wasn't that great of an achievement. This year was a bit more of a challenge, for the very reason that I'd only read one, The Mars Room by Rachel Kalsner, and I'm just trying to pull up the long list here. And this year there seemed to be more of a reach in terms of who got longlisted. There aren't many well-known writers. There's a couple of picks that are unconventional for the Man Booker. There was a thriller by the name of Snap, which I did attempt to read, and I'll give you my thoughts in a second. And there was Sabrina, which is the first ever graphic novel that was submitted for the long list. So some quite ambitious choices here compared to last year, where the picks were more conventional, better known authors, books that people had been talking about. There weren't many surprises from the list, and I will say that last year, now I've read 12 because I read Arundhati Roy's book since the Booker Prize. I gave 6 of the long-listed books last year 5 stars on Goodreads. 2, Paul Auster's 4321 and Roy's book, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, are masterpieces. This year I've read 5 of them, and although a couple of them were enjoyable and I thought literary, ambitious books, in general it's the list so far has fallen a bit flat for me, and it might just be that I'm not reading the cream of the crop yet, and that will come later. So just to go through let's go through the long list. I'm sure if we can do it here. Let's see, Man Booker long list 2018. Let's see what we get. The books that were chosen, the first one is Belinda Bauer's Snap, which is a genre crime thriller kind of book that follows the story of three children whose mother disappears suddenly when her car breaks down on the side of the highway and is discovered dead a week later. And it follows the mystery over several years after that. This was, I gave up on it. I DNF'd it. I rarely do not finish books that I start. I feel the principle of, finishing what you start is important for books to really get a full sense of it, but it was painful. This book, the characters were flat, the writing was plain, it was boring, to be honest, and those who I respect and I know on Goodreads who have read this book, apologies, that's my dog barking in the background, they were not huge fans of this book at all, and it's been slammed in many respects. And I think it's unfortunate because I applaud the Booker jury for choosing to longlist a genre book. I think genre should be considered a part of the literary canon, and there are wonderful works of literature that I would suggest fall under, crime or mystery that deserve to be considered. And I find it unfortunate that this is the book that managed to get longlisted, because I think it will create reservations among future juries when considering the genre. It may be one of the worst books that I have read to be longlisted or shortlisted for a prize in a long time, and I'm saddened by it. But that's the consequence. The second one, which I've also read, is Anna Burns' Milkman, and now this is a book that takes place in the Troubles in Northern Ireland, probably in the 1960s and 1970s, and it follows a protagonist, a young 18-year-old woman, as she deals with the realities for ordinary people caught in the midst of a civil conflict like this. So that's the background. What makes a book special, though, is how it's told. It's definitely an example of form rising to the front. It's almost a stream of consciousness. It is an exhausting book. It's about 300 pages. It took me 4 weeks to finish it. I had to put it down regularly. There aren't many moments for a reader to catch their breath. In addition to that, there's certain stylistic quirks, like the characters are given generic names. So her maybe boyfriend is referred to as her maybe boyfriend. Her third sister is referred to as her third sister. The milkman is referred to the milkman, and it's almost this distancing effect. So in many respects, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really unique way of telling the story. I'm not sure many people would enjoy it. I don't know how many people would put through, because I'm a relatively fast reader, and for me to take 4 weeks to go through a book that wasn't that particularly long, I am not sure how many in the broader reading public are going to do so. Nonetheless, it's one of the better ones I've read so far of the list. I've read 5, so we'll see. The next one is, and this is the Canadian, or one of 2 Canadian long-listed ones, and this is Essie Edugian's Washington Black, which I haven't read yet. I'm waiting for it to come in the mail. I ordered the British copy because it's beautiful and more gorgeous, I would suggest, than the one coming from Canada. I know it's a story of a runaway slave from the islands. I think it takes place in the 1800s. I've heard mixed things in the reviews in terms of how the writing isn't particularly, doesn't blow one away. But nonetheless, it's she was shortlisted a few years ago for her book Half-Blood Blues, which takes place in Berlin following during the Nazi era, the jazz scene there. I haven't read it. I've heard very good things. I suspect that this, this grand historical adventure seems to have elements of genre crossing with steampunk iconography on the cover, so we'll see how it works. And I'll probably give a review when I might do a second half booker list when I get to more of these. The next one is Guy Gunaratne's In Our Mad and Furious City. Again, haven't read this. It seems to be a story of that takes place in urban London. Of the reviews I've been seeing on Goodreads, it seems to be one of the favorites among readers, at least. And a lot of people are pegging it as the winner. I suspect it will get on the long list or the short list, but there's an issue I want to raise in a second after I go through all these. Daisy Johnson, Everything Under, seems to be a bit of a fantasy fairy tale kind of story. Don't know any details. I have it on my Kindle. I will get to it, but I'm taking a bit of a break after The Milkman exhausted me. Rachel Kushner's The Mars Room is a book I really enjoyed. It's the one book I had read prior to the long list. It follows the story of a woman in the California penitentiary system. It is insightful not only into the nature of what being in jail for a woman is in the United States, but also the backgrounds of their lives and the impact, whatever led to their point where they ended up being convicted and sent to jail. I'm not a huge fan of Kushner. I've read her previous books. Flamethrowers was not blown away. This one was great. And I hope it gets long-listed or short-listed. Initially, I didn't think it would. I'm cautious about how many Americans will make the long list or the short list because the last two winners are Americans. There's still a lot of debate and some resentment in the British publishing industry about the Americans winning the last two, be it Lincoln in the Bardo or Paul Beatty's book, I forget the name. Okay. Anyways, they won the last two, so there's some resentment about that. So I don't think there's going to be an American winner. So how many will get in the shortlist? Don't know. Maybe this one. The next one is Sophie McIntosh, The Water Cure, which seems to be a feminist dystopia or dystopic book. I don't know much more about it. Not available yet here in Canada. Then there is Michael Ondaatje's Warlight, and Ondaatje did win the Golden Booker Prize for his book The English Patient. Again, I'm not a huge Ondaatje fan, so I had some skepticism when I picked up Warlight, but I really enjoyed it. Takes place after the Second World War, follows two young children who've been abandoned by their parents, and slowly and are left with what appears to be criminal elements, and slowly we begin to discover, as they do, the role that their parents, specifically their mother, played in British espionage during the Second World War and afterwards. Deals with important issues of memory and the kinds of choices, sometimes quite brutal choices, people made during the Second World War and the consequences that they had to face in the years afterward, which usually aren't talked about. The writing's stunning. I really enjoyed it. I hope it does get shortlisted, although Ondaatje's won before, so I don't suspect he'll win again. Odds are low. Then there's Richard Powers, The Overstory. Apparently this follows, it's told almost through the perspective of trees and humans. Again, there's probably a fantasy element. I've heard good things, but it's 500 pages, so I might hold off. If it gets longlisted, then I'm going to pick it up. But if it doesn't get longlisted, it might be just one that I'll not choose to read. Although I have access to it, it's on my Kindle, so we'll see, or my Kobo, so we'll see. The next is Robin Robertson's The Long Take. This is a story told almost like a poem. I've heard great things. The reviews on Goodreads are amazing, but I don't have access to it here, so we'll see if that changes. The next is Sally Rooney, The Normal People. I did not read. I picked it up once, but I didn't finish it or even start it. I think it's Conversation with Friends. That was her first book. This one is coming out at the end of this month. I think it's actually supposed to come out one of these days. So hopefully I'll be able to see it and pick it up and read it. I have a feeling it's going to be shortlisted. I don't know anything about it, and I'm not going to waste our time reading the back right now. And the last one is Donald Ryan's from a Low and Quiet Sea. This is a story that I have read. It's almost 4 short stories that get intertwined or interconnected at the end. It follows various characters, one a Syrian refugee, others Irish protagonists who have gone through various experiences, and it all gets tied in obviously by the the detail of my description. It didn't necessarily leave a huge mark with me. It's beautifully written, it was well done. Doesn't leave that much of a mark. Is not, and you know, I'm not sure I was convinced with how everything tied in. I thought it was a little too neat. So that's it with the Booker. If I were to wager at this point, and I think let me figure out when we actually get the long list comes, the short list comes out September 20th. So I'm hoping I can get to a few more. We will see. Oh, I forgot one. Sabrina. This is the graphic novel, which I've actually heard is quite good. I have a hold on the library. I'm hoping going to get it in the next few days, and we'll get a sense of what it is. If I were to guess at this point, the short list, I keep on getting the long and short mixed up today. If I were to pick 6, which is usually the number that they go with, I would say The Long Take, Sally Rooney's Normal People, and Guy Guinarantny's In Our Mad and Furious Cities. I think these are locks. I think these are the books that will definitely be there. And this is obviously, have I read any of these? No, I haven't read of any of these, but just seeing what the kinds of the reviews and impressions are leaving people, these seem to be the ones that are sticking out. In terms of the other 3, I think there needs to be some geographic spreading out. Of the American ones, I would suggest Rachel Kushner will be the one American that will make the long list. I would give it to Essie Adugian's Washington Black to also make the short list. And in terms of the last one, I wouldn't mind seeing Anna Burns' Milkman there. I don't think it's as good of a book as Warlight, but I think it is such an ambitious structure that give a few more people an opportunity to read it, bring attention to it to broader audiences would be worth it. So that's it with the Booker. I'll probably give a video shortly after the short list gets announced, and give you my impressions there. I can't pick a favorite right now. Maybe Sally Rooney. There hasn't been a female winner in a long time since the Luminaries, and there's a lot of criticisms, rightfully so, of the award industry being, especially the Booker, being very male dominated, and so if there's a tie or in terms of the books that are getting most praise, that would be the one maybe. Okay, so what are things to look forward to? I will try to make a few more videos in September. Some things that I will want to talk about is the Giller Prize, which is Canada's biggest, most significant literary prize. Maybe comparable one would be the Governor General's Award, but the Giller has a bit more sexiness to it. Their long list is coming out soon in September, as is the National Book Award, which is the major award in the United States. Their long list comes out the 2nd week of September, so maybe I'll do short videos for those. And in September I want to do something a little different. I'm calling it Short Story September. I try to read several collections every year that come out. I feel that September will be a chance to maybe read 2 or 3, and I'll maybe do a short video to encourage more people to read and pick up some short story collections. So that's it for now. Thank you for catching up, and hopefully I didn't lose all my audience, as small as it was. Anyways, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.